All right. So let's talk a little bit about wireless networks and some of the things you need to know about this for your exam. And if you've already been looking through this, you probably have seen a few questions. But one thing that we need to make sure that everybody understands is that the wireless is the IEEE 802.11 standards. And usually for wireless, we have some sort of transmitter. And so a lot of pros and cons on this, really for convenience purposes. Wireless networks are beautiful. One of the things that we need to take a look at here are the different types of standards that are available. And one of the things that is important is that knowing that there are different standards here, including Bluetooth, that have different frequencies that they talk on and different bandwidths that they can push data across the network. So if I was preparing for this, to things like 11A being 54 megabits per second, talking on the 5 gigahertz spectrum, 11B pushing data through at 11 megabytes per second, talking on the 2.4 gigahertz spectrum, 11G being 54 megabytes per second and talking on the 2.4 gigahertz, which is different than the A here. If you just compare these two, they both are the same throughput, but one talks on 5 gigahertz, the other talks on 2.4 gigahertz. So keep that in mind. And as you go through and kind of look at some of these, you can really get an idea of why we use them. A lot of times what we see is that a lot of networks are using now the N and maybe even some newer protocols, but it gives us the ability to maybe use a dual band where we have some devices that are run 2.4 gigahertz and other devices that are running 5 gigahertz on the 5 gigahertz network. And so we can isolate different nodes that are on our network based off of how we want the throughput to be, to make sure there's little to no latency on our wireless network. So if I was you, I would take a look at some of the very basic things that are the differences between these different wireless protocols. And if you have to, make a note card for each one of them, because there's a good chance that you will see at least one of these. And I would say that's probably all you're going to see, one of these on your exam, including Bluetooth down here. What probably you will see more on your exam are these types of wireless encryption. Usually, we see in modern day wireless routers, we'll see WPA2 Enterprise or WPA2 Personal. And there are some things that you need to pay attention to here whenever you look at these. And one of the things is that WEP really, it sucks. And I say that based off of experience, that usually if a web-enabled router is made available to an attacker can usually crack that web-enabled router in less than 2 minutes. And because of that, people started to move away from WEP and to integrate into a WPA technology, a WPA. So because of that, things like TKIP, LEAP, Radius, and anything dealing with the security for the 802.11i are utilized. A lot of times in big areas that you may be moving through, like a university or a big building, we'll use something like a Radius server that will allow only an authentication and authorization. You only have to authenticate once, and then as you move through the big area, usually we'll see Radius implementations put into place, so you don't have to go through and re-authenticate. One of the biggest radius solutions that's out there are the 4G networks. Because of the centralized authentication and authorization, people like Verizon and AT&T, T-Mobile, Sprint, they use 4G radius connections because it allows the authentication and authorization. Now, that's not on the 802.11 spectrum. Rather, it would be more of a 4G, 800, 900 megahertz spectrum. But radius protocol is very, very similar in that it gives centralized authentication and authorization. So radius is very widely used in modern day networks because of that, given that authentication. That authentication typically will go back to some sort of governing body like an Active Directory server to see if somebody should be allowed onto the wireless network. And I say that because what we usually will see is, a radius server will be implemented with a WPA2 enterprise that uses things like tokens or Kerberos or maybe certificates of some kind, and will allow a little bit more protection on top of what allows basic types of encryption for wireless networks. Things like the CCNP, which if you look down here, it has these initialization vectors that will be utilized for encryption to make sure that there's no type of replay of wireless transmissions on a network, because with WEP and WPA, replay was something that we could do to actually crack those types of networks. I would encourage you to go out and look at some of our videos that we have on YouTube that explain wireless encryption and specifically talk about things like radius, WPA2, LEAP, EAP, and PEEPs. Those are some of the most popular videos that we have out on YouTube right now.